We are with David Brabham, the son of the 3 times Formula 1 world champion Jack Brabham, and David Brabham was also a Formula 1 driver that raced in 1990 and 1994 with Simtech, and his father Jack Brabham was a 3 times Formula 1 world champion in 1959, 1960 and 1966. He has been one of the first and unique driver to win some races with his own car and also a championship. And he won 35 Grand Prix with his team, obviously after he retired from Formula 1, and he had his team for 30 years since 1962 and 1992. And David Brabham, like I just said, was a Formula 1 driver that also won Le Mans in 2009. And today I'm really honored to speak with you, David.
Buongiorno, Noah. How are you? Very pleased to be on your show. You do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I am curious to know how the passion of your father, Jack, started for racing.
Yeah, well, he started midget racing, like dirt track ovals, in Australia in sort of 1948. But before that, he was very much more involved in the mechanical side. So he was an aircraft engineer in the Royal Australian Air Force. So as a kid, he was always very much into pulling things apart, putting them together. And then when he left the Royal Australian Air Force, when the war ended, he ended up setting up a sort of machine shop where he would be building axles and all sorts of things, had his lathe there, and he'd be making stuff for people. And then he got involved with a friend of his called Ronnie Ward, and they ended up being asked to build a midget car for an American driver, Johnny Schomburg. And so they did. They built this car for him. Johnny went off and did some races. His wife was not happy, did not like him racing. It was very dangerous. There was a lot of accidents, a lot of deaths in that time. So he retired, and there was the car. So Dad took it over and started driving himself, not really knowing much about driving, but clearly had the instinct and the talent that he didn't realize he had. He definitely showed very quickly when he was racing midgets, and wasn't long before he started winning. That's pretty much how it all started.
There are many drivers coming from Australia and New Zealand, like your father, Chris Amon, Danny Hulme, Bruce McLaren, and Oscar Piastri and Liam Lawson, and yourself, to name a few. It seems that Australia and New Zealand have racing DNA inside. Why, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you look at the amount of people in New Zealand or in Australia compared to some other countries around the world, it's very small. So to have so many drivers not only just come over to Europe or America, but also have succeeded. When my father was doing well over here in Europe, he would also go back and race in Australia and New Zealand, and this is where he got to know someone like Bruce McLaren. So he got to know Bruce and actually was quite fundamental in helping him with the Drive to Europe program to come over to the UK and Europe and start racing, and ended up being his teammate at McLaren at Cooper when Dad won the World Championship in 1959, which at that last race in Sebring, Dad was leading and ended up running out of fuel, and he pushed the car across the line to finish 4th and win the championship. But that race also was Bruce McLaren's first Grand Prix win at a very early age. So, very close bonds there with the McLaren family. And of course, Denny Hulme, his teammate from New Zealand, in 1966, went on to win the World Championship in 1967. And I think certainly the success of that really brought a lot of new drivers towards motorsport and wanting to get to Europe and wanting to compete. Bruce and Denny and Chris Amon, they were really the big names from that that side of the world, and it inspired a lot of people, not just drivers, but mechanics and engineers that all wanted to have a go and go abroad.
Your father was a great driver, but how did he start the passion of designing cars? Because obviously, eventually, in 1962, he created the Brabham team.
Dad started off being an engineer or mechanic, so he would make things. So he would make cars for people. He would make his own cars, and in Speedway, he actually raced against Ron Turenak. Now, Ron Turenak became a partner of my father's at Brabham. So every Brabham car that's ever been produced has BT and then a number. So BT meaning Brabham Turenak. And Ron was the designer of the cars. Dad used to make them, and they used to work together, formidable team. But they actually started working together in the Cooper days. So when my father put the engine in the back of the car, he would come up and sketch with the idea of what he wanted. He'd send this back to Australia for Ron to then do the proper design for it, so then he could make it, and he would make it. And that relationship produced really 2 Formula One World Championships before they started together at Brabham. And of course, in 1962, they started that company and started producing cars. And in the 60s, they were super successful. They were the biggest racing car manufacturer in the world at that time. They were winning Formula One World Championships, Formula 2 races, Formula 3 races, and championships with different, customers. And I think over that period of the 60s, they produced something like over 500 cars. So they were a big car manufacturer, not only successful in that space, but also winning world championships in Formula One. And as you say, Dad's still the only person to ever won a world championship in a car of his own construction, and that was in 1966. Next year is 1926, so we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of that amazing achievement. As you say, no one else has ever done it, and never will. I don't think it will ever happen again.
Brabham and McLaren are the only 2 teams to win races with the founder of the team driving as well. I know that Bruce McLaren was inspired by your father. Can you tell me more about their relationship?
They had a very close relationship, for sure. I mean, Dad was a bit like an older brother or a father figure for Bruce. Got him over here to the UK, got him involved with Cooper. And then, of course, as things evolved, when it got to 1966, which is obviously the time when Dad won the championship, at the same time, Bruce McLaren had his own Formula One team and Formula One car. And the other person to be doing it that year was Dan Gurney. So Dan Gurney had also produced his own car and his team to race in Formula One. So there were 3 titans of that period who were building their own cars to try and win Grand Prix and win the championship. Now, Dad was a little bit further ahead, so he ended up being the first to win a Grand Prix, which was Reims, 1966, and then obviously won the World Championship. But Bruce went on to win, but so did Dan Gurney. He ended up winning in his own car. And they just had a very tight bond with all the drivers back then. Camaraderie was something special, and I think a lot of that came to about, and still a lot of deaths going on in the 60s, and it brought that whole community together. Very different to what you see today, I'm sure. The relationship that Dad had, particularly with Bruce, was very special.
I spoke last week with the son of Stirling Moss, and I know that your father won the 1000 kilometers of Nürburgring in 1958, and his teammate was Stirling Moss. What memories he had about Stirling?
I saw that interview, and it was great to see Elliot, who's normally keeps away from the limelight, but it was great to see him out there talking about his dad, because his dad was something special. And my dad had a very good relationship with Stirling. They had a lot of battles together. As you say, they won together at the Nürburgring 1000k. So it was a period where Stirling was one of the biggest names in the sport, certainly when Dad was just starting to get going over here. And he rated Sterling as certainly one of the best that he ever raced against. He just got in the car and drove really quickly, really fast. One of the most naturally gifted drivers, I think he said at that time. They had a very special bond all the way up until, you know, my dad's passing. And it was always very cool to see them together and talk old times and stuff like that. It was brilliant.